So we spend a lot of time on the 480RR and the 430RR Race Edition betas. You would think that the difference between a 430 and a 480 motor, that there would be not a lot of power difference. Out on the trail, in reality, these bikes are completely different. The 480, very responsive, huge power. Sometimes if you're tired, it's so twitchy and you gotta watch your throttle hand. 430 is completely opposite. Very smooth off the bottom, but it likes to rev. You have to shift it more, and it just feels lighter. 50 cc's makes a huge difference on how the bike just swings side to side. There's the overall weight. Even though they weigh exactly the same on the scale, the feel on the trail is completely different. The Race Edition also has a map switch, map 1 and map 2. Map 1, crazy aggressive. You can really feel the motor just wanting to go. Map 2 softens that power, which in low traction situations is really nice. You don't have to use the clutch as much to feed the power. You can just kind of roll it on. It doesn't explode the rear wheel, doesn't break it loose. And then as soon as you're in a sand wash or an open fire road or somewhere you want all the power the 430 Race Edition has to offer, you just flip down to switch 1, map 1, and you're going. Keep in mind, both these bikes are still carbureted. It's kind of the last of the dying breed. I'm sure in the future they will not be carbureted. But even though they're carbureted, we rode all the way to 8,000 feet. They started to burble a little bit once in a while, but really the carburetor is awesome up to about 8,000 feet before you even have to think about rejetting. Just to see how far the bikes would go, we packed some gas in the bags and we rode them until they ran dry. At 42.5 miles, we ran out of gas in the middle of the desert, not even at race pace. So Beta's got to address that. These are off-road bikes. They have a headlight, they have a really nice computer. They have a crappy sized gas tank. So if you're gonna go any farther than out of sight of the truck, get a bigger tank, carry gas, bring a smoke flare, I don't know, you're gonna need help. In stock form, they come with Michelin Enduro competition tires. They work pretty well if you're in kind of rockier, harder terrain. The knob size is not real tall, so you get into sandy conditions or deep loam and you're gonna want more knob. We put Kenda triple stickies on the front with a Washougal on the back, a 120. Pretty big, meaty tire, big knobs. Worked really well out west in a lot of the sand washes and a lot of the softer, loose dirt we have. Let us hook up some traction. The big difference between the Beta 430RR and the 480RR is that the RR Race Edition comes with Marzocchi 48mm close cartridge forks. A little more for the faster, aggressive guy, a little better for speed. Not to say that the Beta forks on the 480RR don't work well, but they're just more plush, more trail speed, where the RR Race Edition, word race, it's a little more for the faster guy who wants to be more aggressive. Foot pegs are also different on the Race Edition. They're kind of more big block CNC'd aluminum foot pegs with little steel pegs in them that work pretty well. Little bling bling stuff like oil filler caps, axle blocks, stuff like that is different on the Race Edition as well. Triple clamps that hold the 48mm Marzocchis are also different. And overall, it's just a little more tricked out and you get those closed cartridge sweet forks. Through our testing, we came to the conclusion that both bikes needed kind of the same suspension setup, even though the forks were different. We went 5 clicks softer on the rear compression, which helped the bike kind of sit down and move through the stroke and really stabilized out the ride. Took a little bit of the front twitchiness out. And the thing about these Betas is they are stable motorcycles. They feel like they have a long wheelbase, they track real well. They do like you to stand up and be aggressive through the foot pegs to make direction changes. They like a little bit of throttle through the corners. They're not exactly a sit on the tank, carve the front wheel kind of bike. They like to have weight on the rear wheel and just go. So a good trait of both the Betas, the 430 and the 480, is that they are stable in rocky conditions. The kind of longer feel of the bike helps the thing track straight through rock gardens, through roots. It doesn't really kick to the side too quick, whereas some bikes that turn real well can be a little more twitchy in those situations. The Beta doesn't exactly corner on a rail, but with a little rider input, it does well.
They're big, they're kind of heavy, and that keeps them going straight through the rough stuff pretty well. You do start to notice the weight in the sand washes a lot. When you're coming down a big sand wash, like at the Nevada 200, it's really deep sand in some sections. Come in the corner, and you shut off the throttle, and you haven't even touched the brakes yet, and it's already diving and wanting to bury itself in the sand. And so that gets a little tiresome after you do that for 100 miles.
So some of the other changes and differences between the 430 Race Edition and the 480RR. The Race Edition comes with a pretty sweet graphics setup, a different seat with a little map thing, pouch in the pocket, cell phone, spot holder. I don't actually know what you would do with that. You might crush your nuts if you landed on it. But the seat's pretty aggressive on the Race Edition.
The seats are really stiff. They're motocross stiff. They're stiffer than some motocross bikes. I mean, if you're a rider that likes to sit down a lot, you're gonna have to change the seat foam. You're gonna have to get a some aftermarket seat for it because it'll brutalize you. By the end of 2 days of riding, both of us didn't ever want to sit down. Like it was pretty extreme how stiff they are.
As a 175-pound off-road lover, I kind of lean towards the 430. I love the map switch so I can soften the power, make it more aggressive. And I just like how the 430 Race Edition feels a little lighter, a little easier to change direction. And I don't need the huge power of the 480 being a smaller guy.
Adam says he'd take the 430. I think I'd take the 480 only because of that motor. It's got so much grunt, so much power. You can ride all day in second and third gear. It just tractors out everything, and it's like a rocket ship. It's pretty explosive. You just crack the throttle off the bottom, and it's instantly on the power. There's no bog, there's no lug. It's just there. So get ready to exercise your clutch fingers because you're going to use them. But I like that. So I think if I was going to choose between the two for my personal bike, I would take the 480 just because of that motor is just intoxicating.
At first glance, this 2015 Suzuki